Freedom and Comfort, in Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. In Brave New World, Huxley writes of a civilization that takes place many years in the future, a dystopian society where people are made in factories with predetermined intelligence and physical stature. Separated into castes from birth, ranging from alphas to epsilons, people are assigned their part of the Brave New World society. Throughout their lives, they are conditioned and controlled, and are even promised a lifetime supply of drug-induced happiness through a drug called soma. In the book, we meet Bernard Marx. An outcast of this society, Bernard takes joy in some of the more traditional values, such as watching the sea or loving one woman, which in Brave New World is not encouraged. Bernard, a supposed alpha with a surprisingly low amount of alpha characteristics, fights against the society that he believes wronged him. Soon, we're introduced to the savage reservation. Here, people are left to their devices. People are starving, living on the streets, and are barely scraping by. They are free from the control of the world state, but at what cost? John is a young man who grew up in the reservation, and despite having to suffer every day, he argues for freedom when introduced to the world state society. Aldous Huxley was an English writer and a philosopher with a great interest in society and the ins and outs of why things work. Huxley was born in 1894 in England. As a child, Huxley had an interest in why things happen, and began developing his career from an early age. His mother would become ill and die in 1908, while Huxley was still a child. His brother would also take his own life after a long battle with depression. Being in debt to his father, he would find work at Eton College as a French teacher, where he was regarded as incompetent. He would later go on to study English literature at Balliol College in Oxford, England. Huxley would publish his first novel at 17, writing many satirical novels about society. Later in his life, biographer Harold H. Watts would refer to his work as the work of a man who is meditating on the central problems of many modern men. Huxley often wrote about the aspects of the future, and technology far ahead of his time. In Brave New World, he mentions helicopters, birth control pills, and other things that were not even heard of or in early development at the time of his writing. And of course, this includes society. Throughout Brave New World, Huxley emphasizes freedom and its effect on the true life of a person. He establishes that freedom is a choice, and by choosing to live freely, one runs the risk of a cruel fate at the hands of the world. However, for many living a life of truth is better than the shell of a life established by complete control. In the society of the world state, people are made in factories, one the same as the other, and have no choice in who they are. They live their lives in a soma-induced happiness and die slowly, almost like living the same day over and over. However, they will always be safe and happy, living in peace and comfort. The people of the world state feel like hollow shells of people, living but not actually alive. However, when we see the beaten-down savage reservation, with people living on the streets and slowly starving to death, we see the other side of that coin. Is freedom a necessity for human beings, something that every person needs in order to truly be human? Or should people submit to control and live a so-called perfect life? In the opening chapters of Brave New World, Huxley introduces us to the Bukhanovsky process, or how people are made in factories, the conditioning and the lifestyle that they must endure. Throughout these chapters, he uses imagery and dialogue to cause the reader to see the grim process where people are morphed into the lives that they will live. In the factory, the air is described as frozen, dead, a ghost, and only from the yellow barrels of the microscopes did it borrow a certain rich and living substance, lying along the polished tubes like butter. Huxley then refers to the factory as being in the breathing silence, the absent-minded soliloquizing hum or whistle of absorbed concentration. He also shows us the conditioning room, where people are told what to believe and how to act in order to benefit the society, but strip them of their individualism. Bernard, a character who, as previously mentioned, fights the system, feels trapped in this kind of society. He enjoys the things that we see ourselves enjoying, things like sitting by the ocean and talking. When he's asked why he detests the society he was born into, he said that he'd rather be himself. The reader is meant to relate to Bernard and enjoy the types of things that we see him enjoying as well, and we developed a respect for his desire to be himself. Through Huxley's use of imagery, the Bukhanovskian conditioning process, and especially through Bernard, it would seem as though Huxley was advocating for the freedom and the true life of the people in these opening pages. However, when Bernard and Lenina, a beautiful woman who enjoys her part of the Brave New World society, take a trip to the savage reservation, Huxley casts doubt over the idea of freedom. When describing the reservation, he draws attention to a space of dust and rubbish separating a house from the village. 2 famine-stricken dogs were nosing obscenely in the garbage at its door, and when Lenina and Bernard entered, the twilight stank and was loud with flies. Later, Bernard and Lenina also come across a dead dog that was lying on a rubbish heap, a woman with a goiter who was looking for the lice in the hair of a small girl. Huxley then proceeds to show us a cruel scene, with a boy being tortured as part of a religious ceremony. The boy is struck again, and at every blow, at first a gasp, and then a deep groan came up from the crowd. We see the effect this has on Lenina, and we're fully exposed to the alternative to the control of the world state, and implications that come with freedom. The reservation is made out to be a complete dump, with people living on the streets and doing whatever they can to survive, and this includes torturing each other. When Huxley introduces this scene to the reader, they see what life outside the government is truly like. Huxley shows the dark shadow cast by freedom, and what it leads to. He casts doubt into the mind of the reader as to whether or not freedom is all it's made out to be. When Bernard, Helmholtz, and John return to the world state, they soon meet with Mustafa Mond as a result of an outcry for freedom by John. Here, Mustafa Mond informs Helmholtz that he will be banished to Iceland as a result of these actions. However, Mustafa Mond informs him that Iceland is inhabited by all the people who, for one reason or another, have got too self-consciously individual to fit into community life. All these people who aren't satisfied with orthodoxy, who've got independent ideas of their own. He then goes on to say that he almost envies Helmholtz. However, he then mentions the alternative, the world state, a place where people are happy, they get what they want, and never want what they can't get. A place where people are well off, they're safe, they're never ill, they're not afraid of death, and they're blissfully ignorant of passion and old age. Within this encounter with Mustafa Mond, the reader is presented with the final question that's been led up to through the whole novel. It's a society of almost fake people where everyone is happy 24/7 and has no problems more favorable than that of freedom and truth that must run the risks that come with it. 17, Mustafa Mond gives John the opportunity to live his free life and allows John to choose for himself where his values lie. We see John make an attempt at living a pure life, away from the society of Brave New World, where he can live off the land and live a peaceful, spiritual life. However, he cannot escape his anger and sexual frustration and commits horrifying acts of violence at the end of Brave New World by whipping Lenina. He cries out, "Oh, the flesh! Kill it! Kill it!" as he brutally whips a defenseless Lenina. Following this incident, he engages in an orgy and takes soma, wallowing in his own shame and his inability to live freely and possess the comforts of sex and drugs provided by the world state. John tragically takes his own life. Through John's final moments, we see the true implications of the choice that Huxley highlights throughout Brave New World, and that it is in fact a choice. Through John's fate, Huxley comes to the conclusion that one cannot possess both freedom and truth as well as comfort and safety. One can submit to the control of the world state and sacrifice their individuality and freedom, or risk living with truth and likely suffer a cruel fate like that of the reservation. I believe that freedom is a human right that one cannot truly live without. Living is finding your own path through life, following your character, and discovering who you really are. If you don't have the freedom to create your own character, then are you really living? No. You may be alive and healthy, living a life where everything is laid out for you in your own comfort, everything you need to survive, but that is not truly living. In documents dating back hundreds of years, such as the Declaration of Independence, freedom is outlined as a necessity by virtue of being human. As such, if it means living with the risk of suffering the same fate as the reservation, some would say that it's better to live and suffer that fate than to not ever truly be alive.